Is vilifying okay in EDH? What card will be the first pick in the Aura draft? Today we're answering these questions and more. I'm Levi.
I'm Jacoby.
And I'm Joe.
And this is the Thought Vessel Show. Let's jump right in.
So have you ever been in a situation where you should have saw it coming?
Personally? Yeah, a few times.
Yeah,
At least.
I've had a couple. Still feeling the repercussions of one of them. That was fun. Back in the day, probably when I was in second or third grade, I was at a summer camp. There was a slip and slide, and one of the counselors was like, hey, hop on my back. We're going to slide across the whole thing. Me as a second grader like, hey, probably not a good idea, Mr. Counselor, but, you're in the authority figure. I trust you. So I get on his back, and naturally, he goes and slips, and instead of falling on his ass, he falls on my ass because I'm on his back doing a piggyback ride and just smash my tailbone. So I was walking limping like the rest of the week because of that.
Future back problems.
Oh, yeah. We're dealing with all the repercussions. Probably where it started.
Future Levi issues.
Chronic pain origin story.
Back pain beginnings.
Absolutely. How about you, Jacoby?
I was at work last week. I was sitting there minding my own business,
As we do.
as we do. And I look around. I double check what's going on. I see that there's nothing but the floor to squeegee. And I decide, problems for future Jake. Turns out it was problems for future Jake, very more recent. I immediately slipped, caught a concrete floor to the back of my ass.
We just slipping all over the place today.
Uh-huh.
My goodness.
Man, we all hurt. All of these stories just
No
hurting
one
us.
saw it. No one heard it, but I felt it in my soul. I'm like, I just ignored this floor. Literally, it was like, this is a problem for later. Later was sooner rather than later.
Big corporate always knows.
Yeah.
No. No one got hurt. I didn't hurt myself, but I should have just went ahead and did the job.
I didn't realize your name was No One.
But yeah, made sure we're all good. No pains like poor Levi with his tailbone. Not a far fall, I'll say that much.
Certainly not like my story, where when I was in the 6th grade, me and my friend were riding on his bike together. It is a one-seater bike, and I was sitting in between his seat and the handlebars.
Oh, no.
And, we decided to go downhill together.
Not the 45-degree tumble.
Where are your feet on during this? Were there pegs in the front? Like when that situation?
No. Like I am like full side saddle on the bar in the middle.
You witches broomed this?
Yeah. Full what's the show? It's Bewitched. Yeah.
Remember when that was like the standard way for like witches to ride on brooms, and then like Harry Potter came out with Quidditch, and then we got the foot straps, which were not a thing in the books. They only put them in the movies, and now like that's like the standard way to hold.
And there's been recent things that I can't with that series even more now. But I will get that outside of podcast. That is not for this podcast.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, specifically, we went down a big hill. It was like 40 degrees.
It always is.
And we were just fucking flying.
And there you are, just, bewitched sitting on the thing, getting your feet away from the pedals, just hanging out.
Until we hit a bump caused by one of the sidewalk panels being up.
Oh, no.
And we both go flying. He, perfectly fine, had a helmet on. Landed in a very
he's responsible and shit.
He was. That's why I fucking did it. He was over on the grass. He suffered no injuries. How I was sitting on the bike caused my foot to get caught in the spoke of the bike.
Oh no.
And went flying with it. And unlike the nice patch of grass that he landed in, I landed in between the small sliver of grass in between the sidewalk and the very busy road next to it.
How did you not die?
Have you met me? I'm a lucky motherfucker.
Luck of the Irish.
He felt super bad about it, though. And literally, as I was laying in the hospital bed, next to him.
We just skipped the fact that, I also had to go to the hospital.
No. That's how that goes.
As I woke from the coma 5 years later.
Come on, Levi. This is the not less interesting part of the story.
Yeah, no, he was next to the bedside crying because I was in the bed. Foot was fractured, we found out. And
yeah,
and I just go, don't worry about it. This was my own doing. as I was just trying to console him because, like, I was not fully in pain since my foot was just kind of set. And I was just like, this is fun. That was fun flying through the air. My parents really freaked the fuck out when somebody was calling them from my cell phone and it was not me. Their 12-year-old son.
Hi,
is
random
this-
stranger with
is
my
this-
child's phone.
Hi, is this? Who are you? I don't have your ransom money.
My phone held up because it was a Nokia.
That's
It probably broke your foot.
Nokia. We're stronger than your feet
No.
bones.
No, it was definitely the fact that my foot was caught in the spoke of the goddamn bike.
No, I'm going with the phone. Nokia
You know,
did
if
it.
you wore like a vest of Nokia's, you might have been okay.
And by the way, to really bury the lead, you know how I said he was wearing a helmet?
Oh, I know you weren't.
Yep.
That was obvious.
That explains so much.
I'm still smart and stuff.
Smart and stuff. Love it.
I was gonna go with a personality change, but hey, here we are.
There we go.
I am happier than when I was back then, so that's true.
That's where the chaos began.
He's happier. That's possibly where the chaos began.
In an alternate universe, he's a mono green player.
Oh god. And how, in an alternate universe, Joe refuses to play outside the pie. He only makes monocolor decks.
I play the monocolored decks like God intended.
I might not have even gotten into Magic.
Yeah, that's true.
I might have stuck with like the fringe indie games where like they didn't really get off the ground and I keep trying to push them on people. I spent so much money in these things. Come on, play with me.
Oh, no. That version of Joe still plays Magic. He looked at when they introduced the devoid creatures and just threw up in his mouth a lot. Was just like, my colorless creatures having pips and just the entire time.
Back in my day, we had colored pips on creatures, and that's all. They weren't any kind of other different color.
The most OP thing was Sarah Angel, not any of this Eldrazi bullshit.
That Joe would be like shaking in his boots right now at the presumption of a 5-color Eldrazi deck coming out.
Oh, man. I love it so much. I'm going to get it. I might even get a spring to get like the Uber version of it. Get that bitch foiled.
See, my only thing is because I think they're doing a special foiling on it. Like, I always hate that because if I ever want to go and like change out a card and it doesn't match the rest of the deck, it would drive me insane.
Can't relate.
Get good.
Damn, teaming up on that one. Damn.
All right, fine. We're going to move on to the next topic. I'm going to go myself.
Correct.
Today we are reading our Am I the Archenemy? Going on probably should have seen this one coming. Joe, take it away.
Am I the arch enemy? I was playing in a 2-pod tournament with 4 players per pod, and the top 2 players advanced in the winner's pod for the prizes, packs, and such. That's a really small tournament.
Yeah.
That is an 8-person tournament. What are you doing?
I mean, there's some of these smaller towns that you just don't have a lot of players around. Like, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's just a really small tournament for like CDH or EDH in general.
Yeah, I mean, like
if you lived in Florida, you'd get it.
Yeah, like there's.
I mean, I wouldn't
pockets.
want to live in Florida.
No one does, but Florida.
No, that's the most accurate statement I've heard.
When I was living in Florida, shops had like 4 players max. Like
Yeah.
you find your people who play in a pod, and that's the only people you play with. Period.
Fair enough.
Like when I lived in Wisconsin, like we didn't have a local game store that played a lot of Commander outside of 30 minutes away. So we had a pod of like 4, maybe 5 people, and that's what we did on Wednesdays. So it was kind of one of those like if you don't like what the person's playing, like adapt or die.
It's just weird for it to be a tournament to fire. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at.
But-
Like having people just play in the area, that's perfectly fine. A tournament is a different story entirely.
It is weird, but that's kind of small town magic
Yeah.
where the meta is essentially someone's decision.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because you could have some like really niche metas where like there's certain cards you put in your decks that make sense for you, but no one else.
Which, funny enough, based off someone's decision. So the Nagila player cast Bear Umbra to get infinite combats and win the game. I was playing my Locust God deck and had a Swan Song in hand and told the Nagila player that I would pass priority if he killed me last. To this, he agreed and we both went to the winner's pod. Am I the archenemy?
Short, sweet, and to the war cream. I like it.
It is important to note that this is a 2-year-old post, which is why he's playing Locust God, because I have not seen that deck in a hot minute.
I think that we've had some newer cards enter the meta, like especially having Quasar with Esper, where it's kind of fallen out of flavor. But I think with some of the newer stuff coming out, there might be a chance for a resurgence.
I think it's interesting that you replaced favor with flavor, and it still works. Basically, if you build a Locust God deck today, it still can work.
Absolutely.
It's just where you're trying to get that win from. I think you still try to do breach lines.
I mean, not necessarily in the CDH deck, breach line, sure, but it's like Locust God, even wheeling, make a bunch of creatures, shared animosity or something, making them all plus X plus 0. If you have 10 insects on the field, they're going to swing in 11 11s. That's going to kill most of your table in a casual setting.
Mhm.
But you have Niv Mizzet in those colors, which has the curiosity lines.
Yep.
You have Xyrus and Teamer, and you can do kind of your snake things, and you can put Locust God in that deck, and you have Quasar, which is doing a draining and gaining kind of a strategy, and they're all applicable. And then also you have your Halden and Shabraz if you wanted to go with that route too.
Totally fair. But back on the subject, I'm dragging you boys in here. Locust God did nothing wrong. Like, yeah, it kind of is going to leave a sour taste in your mouth, because as someone who's probably been relative to the other two players, that's going to be really bad when you hear the "I'll let it resolve if" statement. Never. That's always the "oh no" moment.
But even then, I fully disagree, because this is king making. Full stop. That is a breach in needing to win. It is not supposed to be, well, I'm going to get into the next pod. No, that's not how that works. You are trying to win. And him getting the infinite at that point, there's no reason for that.
If you put prize support on the line and then you put into the tournament the top 2 win, then that is free game. Now, if it wasn't top 2 win and he still did that, sure. Scott, like it was point based, like first place gets 4 points, third place, second place gets 3 points, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
Then I disagree with it, because then it's like, you're scheming for points. You get into the winner's pod. Sorry, not sorry.
We don't know what the other two players were playing. We don't know at what point of the game. The dude is only saying, I'm letting this kill the other two players because I can get into that, and fully sandbagging that game.
All right, let me ask you a question. Let's hypothetical. Let's just say instead of a tournament, this was a commander league. You're going into like the final week of the season. Like first place gets a certain amount of points, second place gets a second amount of points. Statistically speaking, if you get second place or above, you win the league. Do you make that deal because that guarantees you the grand scheme victory?
No, I personally don't, because that is against my morals when playing this game.
I think having a great moral compass is all good and part of being a wonderful player in Magic. That opinion changes drastically if we have to consider price support, because at the end of the day, if you're going to sit here and tell me make the decision that gets you less value for the event you paid to be a part of, sorry, not sorry, no.
I akin this to the CDH scandal that happened last year, where the guy was like, I'm not going to get priority bullied. Literally, so many people in the tournament scene said, great, you'll never see a top 4 ever again, because you cannot be trusted.
Cool, and that's
exactly what I would do for that guy as well. That guy cannot be trusted, because he will sandbag games for his own gain.
And it's very possible, but I think this is kind of on the LGS, because when you look at this as a game objective, like I'm going into this game, what I need to realize is I am trying to get to the winner's pod. So first place or second place is technically a win in my book. Yeah. So they are setting up things in this parameters of like first, second, third, fourth, which I don't know how a combo win would be affected by that. I don't know how that would be ruled. As far as like if everyone died in like alternate win con, like Thassa's Oracle or whatever, because technically it's first place tied for second or fourth or whatever.
We can only assume that based off of the time span that there's a possibility that the Oracle combo hadn't made its way into the meta.
But, like Approach the Second Sun or the Lab Man or whatever, like any kind of alternate win con where like people didn't die, but there was a winner. Or do you just like let them win and then like let the other people duke it out for second and just have them like vacate? Or it's weird.
Here's the other issue I have with like the point of view retrospectively that you're holding, right? The person you have an example of where it's the priority billing guy where no one will ever trust him and he doesn't get it anywhere, right? That's in a version of our format that's functioned like every other version where it's one winner, not two winners. If we were in a situation where it's two people get to advance in every pod, it changes how you treat it. At the end of the day, it's going to encourage deal making to be like, I don't want to be third. Can we do X, Y, Z so that way I could try to advance? Like there's going to be some not legitimate arguments to be made for, or like deals to be struck that you would never agree to in the situations you'd be in. Like in generic CDH, you never not counter the thing. It doesn't matter what universe you're in. You always do it. You don't ask.
And I think with that as well, I think you would also see like an increase in stuff like Secret Rendezvous or Scheming Symmetry, where like at the beginning of the game, I'm going to pick like my effective partner, and then I'm going to do everything I can to help out my partner. And then one of us is going to win. The other person's going to get second. We move on to the next thing, where the LGS has created this environment where that is technically the rules of the game we're playing. It's not just a pod, winner moves on. It's a pod, top two move on. So technically speaking, your objective is to get to the top two. So I think what he did was an archenemy move. In my opinion, the better question here is it okay to be the archenemy here? Because that is the scenario in which the LGS presented for you.
Yeah, if you had described this exact scenario without the 2-ups, you and I would be of the exact same accord here. There would be no contradiction between our opinions.
Even then, I wouldn't want to be in that tournament anymore. Full stop, because that kind of behavior is exactly what's going to be encouraged. And I don't want to be in a pod where somebody will sandbag players and not win. Quote unquote, not win. They are not actually winning the game. They are getting a participation trophy that brings them into a higher bracket. And they did it because they thought that was the best play for them, instead of doing the actual optimal play, which is not letting the Najila combo the fuck off.
But we also see this happen in like standard and modern and stuff. Well, you'll have people that will take a draw in the final round, so they both end up top 8.
I was about to say,
But that's the final round. That's a different scenario. That is not, I'm going to make the deal in the 3rd or 4th round to do this. No, that is the final round. That's when they can do that because they're both going to benefit, and it doesn't matter because they're not sandbagging any other player at that point.
the tournament's not big enough to really not sandbag somebody if you're not super, super careful. It's fucking 8 players. There's literally 2 rounds. It's literally first pod, winner pod, period. That's it. It's not like 3-4 rounds like what you'd consider that to be a real detriment to. If the tournament were bigger, I'm sure they wouldn't even have the 2-player advancement rule.
All right. I think it comes down to, at the end of the day, it is poor sportsmanship, but very tactical gamesmanship.
Yes. If we're gonna say, like, if we're gonna sit here and say, is it sportsmanlike? No.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hell,
And that's
not-
where I'm dying on that hill. Fuck that guy.
I'm not telling you it's sportsmanlike, but I am gonna tell you, you put prize support on the line and I get the offer, I want my prize support. Sorry.
So, and clearly he went into the game saying, hey, I need to make the top 2. So by making that deal, he was able to get his top 2. So I see it as simple as a political play. Like, hey, I need to get this particular amount of points, or I need to make sure that my creature stays around. I'm going to make a deal with you. This just happened to end the game in that capacity as well. And he got to move on to the finals and so and so. But so I would say, are you the arch enemy? Yes, but it was still smart.
I still think no, only because your environment indulged this. If you were in a generic tournament like every other tournament, you probably would never have made this decision. It would have never even crossed your mind. You would have just killed the thing and called it a fucking day.
Would you, in the league environment, would you take that as, like, if you needed to get second to win the league? Final round, no advancement.
If it's final round,
You have to get second or above in order to
If it's
win the thing.
if it's CDH,
Casual.
uh,
Like it's everyone bought
even-
precons and upgraded over time.
even then, it's weird to split a prize 4 ways. Usually, if it's like,
Well, it's not splitting your prize. Like you played over weeks and you got points, but getting second place would get you enough points that you are mathematically locking yourself into first.
I'm also unsure. I understand why you brought in the point system, but that's not what was happening there. If it was in a tournament setting where you're not getting points,
Mhm.
you're just playing, it would be splitting the prize support at that point. Even if you got into that last round, it is splitting the prize support at that point. And that's a weird situation to be in. I know that I was in a tournament setting where 2 of the people dropped before they told the judges. So it was me and one other person in a 4-person pod in the 5th round of the tournament. And they said, you could play it out or you could just take a draw. And we both looked at each other and was like, this is a 1v1 commander environment. We're taking the draw because our decks aren't formulated for 1v1. They're formulated for 4-people pods. I still wouldn't do it. This hurts me deep in my pit because it is unsportsmanlike. I don't care if it's prize support. I care about playing with people I actually enjoy playing with, and that would fully sour me on that person, full stop, and would never deal with them, even outside of the tournament. That's my opinion. That guy, I don't care.
And that's fair. I guess my thing is that it shifted because the way it was set up, it shifted, I guess, the goalpost of what's considered a win. That's what I'm trying to get at. Whether it's the league or the advancement, in that pod, there are 2 winners. Like through just game theory logic, that is the case. You're trying to advance. So he was able to successfully advance. That was the objective of playing in that pod.
Yeah, and like last week where there was the type of person where I don't care, you're perfectly valid to be like, not, would not, cannot, personality, not you. Perfectly reasonable. That's valid. I can't share your opinion on this one. That's all.
Last time, I actually still was in agreement. I just wasn't as in vehement agreement as you. You were vehement.
Because, listen, at the end of the day, I care about how a person acts more than I care about what they play. And to me, when you offer someone an obvious, like to me, the way this tournament was set up is a trap.
Yeah.
I do not think you ever set up a tournament this way. And because the player basically fell into the trap, it's a decision where they get a benefit, and the only negligence is like, of the 8 people, 4 of them might look at you funny. Like, it's a 2-edged sword both ways, in my opinion.
No, I think if you're taking a casual format and turning it into a competitive environment, you either need to, 1, have an extreme ban list to prevent someone from bringing a CDH deck. You have to, 2, have a sealed pre-con that you can like upgrade over time or something like in a league, or it has to be just full-blown CDH.
Or you
this is a square peg round hole.
Or you just don't give it, like I said, the 2 victors.
Yeah.
You don't give the person the incentive to not counter the fucking spell.
See, at this point, the biggest thing is that they should have, in fact, put a minimum on firing. Like, so many tournaments that I've been in have a minimum on firing, which this tournament, I understand that it's small. This is, in fact, where you gauge where your base is. You should have had minimum 16 people to fire.
What if that's the only, what if this is the only 8 people in the area that play?
Then
and you just don't have 16 people.
Then they should have structured it in a different way. They should have done prize support per pod instead of you have these 2 victors go on to a singular prize winning pod.
I don't wonder if this is because it's so short. I don't wonder if it's like a gag that he made it a short post as like a haha because it's 8 friends and he's just like, I'll split it with you, Joe. And like later on, it's just like, yeah, that was an asshole move, but it was funny.
I mean, true. Yeah, if everyone knows each other and then chill with it, this is entirely different conversation.
If we were playing a game and we had per se one of our friends, and then you went to combo off, and I could make the total deal to sandbag the shit out of Levi and whoever else it was because I know them, I would totally be like, hey, Joe, you gonna let me get second, buddy? Whether you said yes or no is irrelevant to the fact that I would totally commit to it in all fun and games.
Yeah,
sure.
And if in a tournament setting where there's prize support, I would still offer the deal. Just because it's funny amongst friends. If it was you, I, and 2 complete strangers and then 4 other strangers, different argument. Because then you just don't do it. Unless you're going to get prize support, in which case I'll still offer it to you, but you're still an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably think differently if the guy actually said friend in the post.
To be fair, he didn't even say strangers. He just said people.
Yeah.
He pointed out a deck name. He didn't even specify guy to his left or right.
Hi, person.
Najila player have no friend.
Levi's just like, Najila players have no friends, as he is sitting here as my friend.
Najila only no punch.
Najila only no punch.
Najila smash.
Right. In In the topic, though, of gamesmanship, this just bring us into our penny for your thought vessel topic here, where we're talking about vilifying. So I'll give you kind of an example of what vilifying is. So on a recent game nights or extra turns, can't exactly recall, there was a player that was slightly ahead of everyone else and a player that was somewhat in second place. The player that was in second place had a draw spell, and he let the player that was in the lead draw the cards instead of himself to force the rest of the table to have a undistracted focus on that one player. In that particular game, it totally backfired. The player had enough protection to just take over the game at that point. But it brings up the concept, is it okay to use a vilifying strategy in a casual environment?
I mean, if you have a person draw that many goddamn cards, of course it's gonna backfire. But I mean, for the actual question, I mean, usually it helps throw it's playing to your outs. It is trying to put suspicion onto another person than trying to keep yourself less suspicious.
I have a short and a long answer. I'm going to give both. I'm going to start with my short answer. Absolutely not.
Okay. And long answer?
I refuse to sit here and tolerate people villainizing other people as a means to accommodate victory. I hate that more than the sheer concept of unsportsmanlike shit. I cannot stand it.
Well,
I'd rather fight someone who I know could be possibly a cheating piece of dirt than sit here and listen to someone try to make a play where they make someone seem way scarier and then they use that as fuel to try and like pretend to outsmart everybody else. That's how I view it.
well, I mean, based off of that definition, and we might just be getting stuck in the weeds in the example. This could actually just be that board state is scarier, regardless of if you add fuel to the fire. You could just be saying, well, that deck can do this, 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 and this, even if there's no possible way that it could at that moment in time, thus making the deck scarier that way instead of giving resources to it to make it scarier.
Well, it's a matter of like somewhat in that capacity as well, but also like, and a good example that we see a lot of is if you have an opponent who's got a really scary creature and then you give it like Rancor, because whenever that creature dies, you get that enchantment back, is a way just to add extra fuel to the fire. Like, oh, this Voltron creature now also has trample we have to deal with.
I think it's still just giving the items to the players that we're getting stuck in the weeds, because you can still do this without giving them stuff.
Allow me to give a different example, right? We have a friend who plays a Turgid deck, okay? Now, I get it. Turgid is a scary creature in a scary deck,
Mhm.
okay? Every time we play with this deck, every single person that plays against this deck either knows what's going on or is someone like another player we have who specifically says that is always the target, even after we definitely deal with it. And they use that as a means to buff up their board and then proceed to try to get to a win. An example being, we had a Turgid deck. This guy was running the Mole God, and then I was on like enchantments or something. I don't remember. But they used Turgid and the player as a means to be like, we need to kill Turgid. We need to blah, blah, blah. And trying to make themselves sound like they're trying to say what the actual target is, and then proceeded to go infinite combats because they tried to force everyone else to target Turgid, which is a very good example of the villainizing strategy we're talking about. I cannot stand that. I hate that line of play. I cannot tolerate it. It makes me angry.
That's a soft villainizing. A hard example would be like, oh, you're going to make me discard a card. Let me go get something that I would like discard instant or sorcery so you don't get anything. But I'm going to go give you like the seed board muse in my hand. It's like, oh, now we have to deal with this.
I dislike any type of that type of decision because you're clearly the bad guy, but you're forcing my hand against someone who either cannot or is not in a position to really be the villain.
It also goes into that king making strategy, because if you're giving them any resource whatsoever, of course they're going to use it to their advantage. They're not you. They see that this is a gift. They're not looking that gift horse in the mouth, and they're going to use it.
I cannot emphasize how much that behavior, like it disgusts me to my core.
It is a tricky position to be in, because there are some times in which it is still kind of warranted, because you could be in literally the exact same position as that other player. You're trying to just stem your win a little bit more off of them also trying to win. And it sometimes can just be they are doing the accurate thing and pointing out the actual threat at the table while you're still trying to subdue your win attempt next turn.
If you are transparent about the board state and acknowledge the equal threats you have and can then translate like this is more important right now while still saying this is a thing that exists, par for the course. If you can keep it in retrospect and be like, these are threats, this right here is actually going to kill us now, please deal with it, all for the game. When you go, no, only this, and then try to sweep all of your garbage under the rug like it doesn't exist, kick rocks.
I think also like there is a good factor of politics that do happen in EDH. Like this is a communication based thing, and I don't think you're necessarily of the responsibility to like just shine a flashlight on your own board. If people can come to their conclusion themselves, or other people that are like, oh, well, you also have this as a threat. Versus if only one person's talking, then yeah, they're probably going to control the narrative. But I think having a discussion as well, like if it's something that one person's like pointing fingers a lot, and I'm like the third or fourth player on the board, I might say like, yeah, that's true. This is also scary, and just kind of get that out there into the universe. I don't necessarily think that having someone who's controlling all the talking is necessarily a bad thing to do, but like I don't necessarily think you also have to like just say like, oh yeah, also my stuff is super scary.
Because there's the common thing of just in CDH where you have certain things on your board and they're like, you seem like you're pretty confident that they're the absolute threat, but you look like you can do some cannon flips next turn. Sometimes it is necessary to try and throw aspersions off yourself.
I guess it's totally fair in Love and War. I just have such a stigma about it because I have spent time actively trying to help players. Like, listen, I see you. You don't like this foreign clicks. I'm with you. It's a bad idea. Hear me out. This is going to kill us right now. Please listen to me. He's misleading you and he's trying to get you to do this to waste your stuff. And then they still do what they're going to do. And then the player immediately pops off exactly like I warned them about because the other player just so happened to word it slightly better. No, this is blah, blah, blah. That's really scary, right? And just the whole debacle goes under the rug because one player just seemed more convincing whether the others actually thought about it or not.
Talk no jutsu. It is an unfortunate thing that not everybody has the skill to have insight into another player's words, or in the complete opposite end of the spectrum, have the silver tongue to work their way into a win.
And I mean, it can be frustrating, but this is also kind of comes with the territory of a multiplayer game where they're going to look at stuff differently than you. And like sometimes someone's going to make a mistake and that costs them the game. Like this is just part of it.
We're talking about some really shitty actions this episode. I swear to God.
Although on the opposite side of the coin, I feel equally bad about pointing out the correct narrative, drawing the one nutty card, and then never having to do the decision, but it being illogical to not try to collect the win because you drew the right card. But like at the time with the board state, being able to go through like, these are things that are possible. This is what could be in XYZ hand, my XYZ hand. And like saying, this is what I don't have because it's true. And then drawing the thing that vindicates the stupid asinine argument I just fought.
That's the worst. When you're like full transparency, I do not have a counter spell, and then like you go to your turn and you draw a counter spell, and then they try to do something.
Like that's an awful feeling when you're transparent and you're actively helping the table, and then you draw the thing, and they're like,
I swear to you guys, I don't have the Thoracle.
I now have the Thoracle.
Well, Thoracle demonic consultation, Omaiwa Moshinderu.
I feel like you like almost have to hold it in like the hand you drew, and then you have your other hand over here, so you can just tell, like, prove that it's not in your hand.
I did that. So the exact game I was talking about, I had all my wizards out. I'm like, I literally have no way to win. There's 1 to 2 combat spells in my deck. I have no hand, guys. It's okay. I can't hurt you. Please stop this 2-part combo. They kill the combo. Okay, guys. And I have 80 60, 70 cards in deck. Draw a card. Overwhelming stampede.
Yeah. GG. And that's part of it too, where you were being honest. It's just mathematically speaking, impressively, you got the win. Like, that's just how that went down.
And I didn't lie that it
You did.
exists in the deck, but like the chances of drawing it are stupid. And then doing it, it's like,
Yeah. I think this tactic also sucks. I hate it. I'm with you on this, Jacob. I wasn't fully with you on the last story, but this one, oh yeah, you and I, best buds.
Now,
Dap it up.
Now, we talked about active villainization, like really making somebody the threat, like undisputed. But there's also passive villainization that is harder to see, and it's harder to prove that it exists. But this is an example of there is a player on the board who has a very scary Voltron commander that does not have hexproof. You have a Swords to Plowshares in hand. You just continue to let them grow and get bigger and scarier as long as they don't get hexproof, because you want everyone to focus on that one person. And then if it ever like comes to you or they try to give it hexproof, then you get rid of it.
Oh,
Like,
so your strategy.
you like let other people use the thing. Cause like not everyone's an island. So you have to be able to use the other players as well. And a part of it is like having them focus on getting rid of a bigger threat. But using passive villainization or vilifying is another tactic in this game of just kind of like, okay, well, you're getting scared, but I have it under control. So I'm going to kind of let you keep going. And if something worse comes around, then I still have the thing.
It's what's called burying the lead. You have the ability to deal with the problem in your hand, but you are not letting it known that you can deal with it, so that if it eventually comes to you.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about lying and saying I don't have the thing. I'm just saying like, don't.
Hence why I said your usual strategy, because you do that a lot.
So, how do I word this? I love you, Levi. I really, really do. However, I have a non-negotiable feeling about particularly this strategy. A lie of omission is a lie nonetheless. Not acknowledging the ability, to me, is extremely villainous. Now, granted, that's not saying I think you shouldn't do it, because you shouldn't reveal everything you have, and you should save all your pieces until you're ready to strike. It's a valid point, and it's one of those parts where like there is no good argument against holding back because you want to collect the victory, and the easiest way to do that is to not reveal that you can answer it until it happens to be your problem. I just personally greatly dislike it. I don't like to bury the lead because the fact that we're playing a multiplayer game means part of it is socializing and like working together against certain parts and not working together against certain parts. And burying the lead is contradictive to that idea.
But they should just have the answers in their deck after they build it, right?
That's why I don't like it. That is the exact, like the answer that everyone gives me. And this is a discussion we've had outside of PBK where it's like, just have more removal. If everyone buries the lead and just lets the thing happen because it's not coming at them, there is never going to be enough removal for every considerable threat at a 4-player game if I have to always operate under that assumption. That's why I don't like it.
Well, I think in some capacity, like this is also why priority matters. Like if the person directly across like the first in priority to deal with something, if I've already said like, it's okay, guys, I've got a beast within, I can take care of it. If they have a Swords to Plowshares, they're gonna let me take care of it and leave it alone. Or I might get rid of the threat and then something much, much worse gets cast that's going to win on the spot versus like it looks scary, but I can deal with it, where it's reusing something in an inopportune moment for you. But I think also like if you make a mistake in a game and you lose because of it, I think that's okay. Like you can learn from it and then know what to do next time. I don't think it's as damning to, oh, I should not have held back the removal spell. I should have used it on that. Like it's okay to learn from those mistakes and kind of adapt and move on.
Like swing on Levi.
I mean, you could try.
The other issue is that like there are instances, again, I'm using you as my example because you're the primary example of these things I deal with.
Sure. Bring it on.
Well, it's not
It's
negative,
life.
but the problem is like you are never clear cut with your removal. Your answer is never solid. So if I'm sitting, we've had a situation in the past where I'm like, I don't know if I can, like, who wants to remove this? And you go, I may have, and then you didn't. Or you may have, but you're not willing to suffice it because you want me to use my removal. It's hard to make an argument one way or the other because I will never know whether you have it or not. And that's great and all for your strategy until I go, well, either you deal with it or we die because I actually don't have anything. I was just asking. And then we either die or don't.
But I think, bluffing is a part of the game too. And like, I'm not showing you the removal because obviously you're not supposed to show people your hand unless like an effect chose you to reveal.
Or it's funny.
Or it's funny.
True.
You got to do it for the memes.
Break the rules for the memes, kids. Moral of the story, it seems like you two are against both of them, passive and active.
Yes.
There's a difference in the passive because it can be a little bit more difficult because it is not so much sandbagging as it is letting somebody else just make their decisions.
Yes, I agree with that. However, I also, the passive one it gets under my skin. Like Ristic Study is a prime example, like Smothering Tithe, like any of these, this or I get benefit is just,
I
hate it.
The passive one, when I first heard passive, was not so much being like, this guy is actively the threat. It's like, man, that thing's real scary over there. And just leaving it at that, not giving any more context. And just people do with that as they will. Just saying, man, that's scary. And not saying, can anybody deal with it? Just, man, that's scary. And that was the passive that ran through my mind because it is not really actively saying somebody should do it about it or saying, man, I wish I could do something about it. It's just a fact that exists.
See, and I think conversation like that is good for the table, especially like a newer player. Like, oh, okay, well, I need to probably figure out why Joe is worried about this particular creature on the board.
See, like, I don't know. To me, the comment it's virtually the same because it leads a line to be drawn where you're like, now what's going on? And then you make the same conclusion as if they made the full statement. Like, I don't know. To me, part of the statement is almost as valid as the entire statement.
But in a different scenario, I myself have said that exact phrase, not necessarily continuing it to say, can anybody deal with it or anything like that, because I am just making a statement of fact, not even trying to villainize them or vilify them. It is just a statement of fact that I make as an observation, not intending to use it as a political tool.
But that's different.
But from your argument, it's not.
No,
because somebody can make those leaps in logic, even if I wasn't even intending to do it.
No, it's different than acknowledging it to yourself than just saying it out loud. Those are two different things.
But saying it out loud can sometimes help me process the board state.
And that's all fine and dandy. You're not actively going, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like you're just saying things out loud because you're trying to work through your logic. That's different than just dropping the, oh yeah, that's a problem bomb in the middle of somebody else's turn.
I think putting things on people's radar too, because there are games that I have won because one of the players had an answer, but just was not aware of when or how a combo could work. They could have stopped it, but they just didn't have the timing right. And then the next time they play, they'll know.
That's where the passive one is very tricky. Like the active one, no, that you are actively trying to be a bad person and showing, again, no sportsmanship in a game and trying to shoehorn every single way that you could try to win into that scenario versus the passive, which could just happen incidentally without you even intending for it.
I suppose it's fair. I also, for example, Mystical Remora is on my list of cards I am not nearly as bothered by, but Ristic Study and Smothering Tithe are on my shit list of cards that I can't stand because they passively recruit it forever, whereas things like Mystical Remora, you have a cost associated to retain the effect. Sure, it starts out pretty cheap, and the value is less questionable than Ristic. It's just, you cast the things, you're pretty much guaranteed to get the card. No one's paying 4 mana to stop you from drawing the card from that spell.
It does have to be a non-creature spell.
Yeah, sure. If Mystic Remora just said spell in general and it had the rest of the text being the exact same, I would feel the same about it. I wouldn't be bothered that it just says spell because, again, paying 4, you're probably not doing it, but also it's rotation. You either pay to keep it or you lose it.
If it said spell, I think it would be more expensive than Ristic Study.
Oh, it'd be super expensive, but also like...
It would shoot the fuck up.
CDH would really like it, for sure.
Yeah. CDH would drop their nuts.
They like it right now.
Hold on. The fact that people literally play a Mystic Remora if they're in the first seat, and people just like, do I feed the fish or not, is already a prominent thing. If it went to spell, there is no deliberating, do I feed the fish or not? because that is going to be turn after turn of doing nothing if you don't feed it at least once.
I think that keeping upkeep gets paid, like paid.
It would, but then they're not doing other things. They're just drawing cards.
Well, I mean, you can get a lot of cards. Though. Like I would take 3 turns off if I can draw like 12 cards, like an early game.
It does depend on what the table is doing, but yeah, I can certainly agree with that one.
Sure, but I take that over Ristic Study, which is if the table, like the first person doesn't pay for it, basically the same thing, but you keep it forever. Like I hate that way more.
So let's bring that back to the vilify and passive vilify. What was that bringing to that conversation?
Some people do not villainize Ristic Study or Smothering Tithe. I do, because I hate it. And it's something where the person getting that passive value, right? And then you just play a wheel effect to give them all of their treasure, let's say. Like, oh, I know you played a Smothering Tithe. I'm going to do this. So now you have all the mana in the world and they have to deal with you, or we just lose to that. Best of fun. I've seen that happen quite a bit.
People saying they're going to accrue all of the value because I'm not paying for Ristic Study. Okay, now I'm tracking.
Yeah, like I'm going to play all my spells and get all this value, and I'm going to let him draw the cards, and you either stop mine thing or we lose to him, or I'm going to get all my value unquestioned. That's the position you have to be in when those 2 cards exist. And I hate that. I hate being like, either I get value and we have to stop me, or he gets cards and he just wins because I had to give you cards to advance my board state. Like one or the other is just guaranteed to be the villain, and I hate that.
Well, wouldn't it be on that player that's not paying for Ristic Study then?
I would actually sometimes defend that player if they had literally no board state and it was a choice of I do one thing to try and catch back up to not have that person draw cards, or play stuff so that I can absolutely have a fighting chance. It's the same strain as when I had to make 3 different deals with all of the other players at the table just so I could do the thing that my deck wanted to do and not even like benefit from it.
Well, and even in CDH, there's, kind of the mindset sometimes in certain games where it's like the things that I'm going to do are more powerful and are worth more than me paying for Ristic Study and slowing myself down.
But then it comes to the same argument. Now it's just you're the villain versus them. And then if I deal with you, I have to hope that villain doesn't just rip it off of his hand because he drew 30 cards.
And they potentially can. And that's, a part of it is the cost benefit analysis that each of these players do. Where like, okay, if I cast these spells this turn, I have a chance to draw into my game-winning combo. Well, maybe that's worth more than letting somebody draw. And then you'll see if you're right or not.
Yeah, because usually the case in that point is I'm going to try and do my combo, and I'm going to see if I can do it despite their Ristic Study, because they're going to try and draw the quote-unquote counterspell.
It gets more down and dirty when we have to consider non-combo players and casual. Like, for example, in a very common thing is like when I was playing my Mardu equipment deck and it runs Smothering Tithe, and just everyone either having to deal with the crazy Voltron nonsense because the other guy is just wheeling, or having to deal with the guy who has 40 cards in hand because the Mardu player is not going to really pay for Ristic Study. The other players aren't really able to play the game and pay for Ristic Study. They're just left with do I handle one or the other? And sometimes they just can't handle either of them. Like or Joda, any Joda deck with a fucking Ristic Study out, it's just cancerous. Because any Cascade deck, not even just Joda, Cascade, and a player has Ristic Study that's not them. Like, you've automatically set us to a point where it's like, either I let them cascade into a bunch of value, which is all free, or I tolerate and deal with the Ristic Study player who definitely has like 20, 30 cards in hand, and then hope that they didn't draw 5, 6, 7, 8 counter spells, and we just die to Joda or die to whatever shenanigans that person drew. In more combo-centric play, it makes more sense to kind of figure out where you're going, decide what things you can deal with. But when you have to think about non-combo, it's fucking atrocious.
I think what you have to do in that context, if you're like player 3 and 4, is you got to hope that player 1 and 2, Joda and the Ristic Study player, is they're in the situation that they're both perceiving I'm in the lead. I need to eliminate the other player. and then work on the other two, and then you and the other person team up on whoever survives that.
Gotta bring in that Triumph the Hordes.
I was about to say, it doesn't ever work like that, though, because the Cascade player, they're just going to kill you all next turn. The Joda player almost always kills you all next turn if it's not immediately dealt with.
Unless the person who kept drawing all those cards just overloads a Cyclonic Rift.
Or
Yeah.
they have spot removal. Like, I mean, as they're swinging swords, the Joda, everything's smaller, block and kill some stuff. A lot of things can happen in a Commander game.
At that point, it's working to your outs, and working to your outs should not include throwing aspersions on somebody else. It's unsportsmanlike.
Yeah, as far as the active goes, like the best case scenario is you get the person gassed up, they draw a bunch of lands or whatever the situation is, they're dealt with, and you have an avenue to come back and win. The worst case scenario is you king made and that person just runs away with the game. And I think the latter happens more than the former, where I don't think the risk is worth trying to turn someone into a villain on that capacity. Where the passive, I think it makes more sense because like there's always something scarier coming in EDH.
Yeah, you can sometimes do that, not even intending to throw aspersions on somebody. It just sounds that way because sometimes shit just be scary, yo.
I view them so equally on their footing because in most scenarios, the examples I'm giving are real examples that happen to me consistently. It's never just the once or twice, or it's like every time this situation happens, it's always like this. It's never something else. It could just be that my pod's not diversified enough when those pieces exist. I do have players in my pods who just do not run Rhystic Study because they don't like it. And that's actually more of my play group than less. I think of the players I currently see regularly on rotation, Levi and I are the only people with Rhystic Study in our decks.
I mean, I just being like cycling through pods and going like online and playing with people, I see so many different players, so many different decks, so many different strategies that I can't say that it happens all the time because there are just differences.
Yeah.
That's why I never see the passive as equal. I see active definitely as equal. Definitely with you on that one. But I think we're talking in circles at this point because we have our points. We've made all of our points.
All right. Well, I guess it's time to move on to the draft here. So this week we are drafting auras. So, chaining to a creature, land, whatever it might be. A simple 3-round draft. Joe, this week you are going first.
Yay.
Jacoby, you are second, which means I am on the back end. So I'll have number 3 and number 4 overall, then back Jacoby, then Joe. Back and forth we go until the end of round 4. So, Joe, you are on the clock.
So my 1 of 1 pick, I have to pick it over everything else because it's Animate Dead. 1 and a black, enchant a creature in a graveyard. There's the key. A graveyard, not yours. And then you return it to the battlefield. It loses all the enchanted in the graveyard, and then now it's enchant creature on the field attached to that creature. And you just have that as long as the aura is attached. And as an additional weird caveat, the enchanted creature gets -1/-0.
Get wrecked. It's a terrible card now.
Yeah, okay. Literally played a game recently, had no lands for 4 turns. Still viable. It was a CDH game. I'm going to show you the hand for that.
Lands are overrated.
Was able to use an Animate Dead on somebody's dockside and get benefit from it before they just Chain of Vapor it back to their hand. I couldn't copy it because I had no lands. But the mere fact that I was able to get a dockside out of somebody's graveyard and get a huge amount of benefit with the Animate Dead means that, oh, hey, I'm going to burn this kill spell, deal with the problem, and then I'm going to be the problem. I see that you had that nice little asshole card, Vorinclex. Now I have a Vorinclex.
Or, get your own stuff.
No. Ho, ho, ho. Now I have a Vorinclex.
I don't understand this. No, it isn't. That's not a word in the World Gorger Dragon Dictionary.
Yeah, there's also the World Gorger Dragon combo. I love that thing. It go burr.
Calling you out, Joe. I know you run that. Jacoby, pick 2.
Before I pick, you disgust me. Anyways.
Noted.
Pick number 2, well, I guess I'm going to go with Darksteel Mutation.
That's a good one.
Yeah, go ahead. Enjoy your commander. It's a 0/1 indestructible bud.
And it's really
No
good because it
abilities.
does not change the zone of the spell. So you can't just say like, "Oh, it's a 1/1 bug now. Let me just go ahead and just throw it back in the command zone." No, it's still technically there, like an oubliette or something like that as well. Like it's not changing zones,
It's the
which makes it
Draenith Magistrate with a single target origin. Get mad, be mad, stay mad, Joe.
with these types of spells. It's also really frustrating because if you're not in the colors that have like consistent enchantment removal, like your game's just kind of done.
Yeah.
Or you just flicker.
I mean,
You
yes, but-
flicker once and it's gone.
yeah, but not every spell has that ability.
Yeah.
And then not every color has that ability.
Also, the deck I play it in, Mazzy. Go ahead, flicker it. Tell me all about it. It will be back up to being a 0/1 bug on my turn.
Deflecting SWAT onto your Mazzy.
GG.
I actually run deflecting SWAT in that deck, and I also run no counter spells. It's all deflecting SWATs with various steps.
All right. Speaking of hypothetical situations, I'm on the clock here at the end of round 1. For me here, there is a particular subcategory of auras that are near and dear to my heart, and those are the Umbras. There's all the different ones. There's not a lot of lore behind them. We don't really know why they exist, but it's just always an artwork, like either riding on top of or like being surrounded by like the spirit of an animal. And they're all really cool. And the most powerful one of them all is Bear Umbra.
Let me take that off my list.
Good. So Bear Umbra is 2 green and 2 colorless. And it says, of course, it has totem armor, which means if the creature ever dies, you can sacrifice that armor instead to have it. So it's kind of like a pseudo indestructible. And it also gets +2/+2. And whenever this creature attacks, untap all the lands you control. So at its worst, you're getting like a second main phase worth of extra abilities to be able to cast additional spells. And then there are situations in which you can loop this for infinite combat steps or things like that as well. It's an extremely, it gives you extra protection for whatever creature you're putting it on, untaps your lands. It's just a fantastic card all around. 3 overall, Bear Umbra, all the way. Now, for my second pick here, because I'm starting round 2, I've got my go-to utility. Love this thing through and through. I want to get a little bit of combo action here, so I'm going to take Curiosity
Fair
with
enough.
my
fair
second.
enough.
So Curiosity is another card that it can still see play in decks if you wanted to just have it as extra value. But you could also have it in something like Niv Mizzet where it goes infinite. So Curiosity is only 1 blue mana, and it is an aura, and what it says, very simply, is whenever enchanted creature deals damage, not combat damage, damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. And also may, so you can't deck yourself out here with this. In a deck like Niv Mizzet, anytime you draw a card, deals 1 damage to somebody, you just keep going until you run out of cards or everyone's dead.
Also in Bralin and Shabraz,
Mhm.
because that one also does the same thing. Even though it can be a little bit more complicated because you have to wait till your cleanup step for the
Clean
most
up,
part.
and then you go to discard and you get them back, and you're still technically in that phase where you need to get down to 7, so you perpetually loop it and hits everyone at the same time. So it kind of helps accelerate the process with that as well. Very good card, or you can put it into a deck like a Bird Tribal or something like that, and just put it on a 1/1 flyer early game and just get some extra cards. Extremely versatile. I love Curiosity. I've played it for a long time in combo decks and non-combo decks, just as like a little extra way to get in, chip in for some damage, get some extra cards, have some fun.
Yeah, I thought about doing that earlier on with the 1 creature prismatic bridge with Brash Taunter.
Sure, absolutely.
But that soon became a pipe dream because people like exiling the Brash Taunter.
Yeah.
So auras became a no-go in that deck.
I mean,
Makes
you
sense.
could put it on an opponent's creature and then draw cards when they hit.
Even then, it's kind of that weird thing of, hey, don't hit me, hit other people. It's just weird.
That's fair. For my secondary pick here, we're going to go with Swift Reconfiguration.
Ooh, okay.
Nothing says haha like turning your big, funny, mean Eldrazi into a clown car, or going off with my own clown car.
Now you can combo with that. You can, if someone's about to board wipe and destroy all creatures, you can turn your best creature into a vehicle, because a lot of those effects are simply, they don't care about being a creature or not. They just like, if it's a tap, like a Sisay tutor or something like that, it doesn't care about being a tutor. I think it's a very versatile piece. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you can actually do that on a Sisay just so you can do the like the Yisan thing where you're constantly tapping on tapping to tutor something up to help you.
And also, it's so much fun to. So I had a Galvanic Genius deck that was vehicles, and I used it as a means to like protect the Galvanic Genius 90% of the time.
Which, yeah, makes sense.
Back to you, Joe.
So my next pick is akin to the Darksteel mutation. But this one has a little bit more range and turns it into a land. It's Song of the Dryad.
Yep, getting that off mine.
Such a good aura to deal with something on the board. 2 and a green, enchants any permanent. Gaia's Cradle? Nah. You getting turned into a colorless forest land. No abilities, no extra things that might be attached. You are a forest.
I was really hoping that'd get back to me, but yeah, that's definitely a really good card.
No. I
Just
were
the
hoping you were going
solidary no.
Yeah, it was a pipe dream, but yeah,
it was absolutely a pipe dream.
I was hoping because Darksteel Mutation went, I was like, maybe it falls, but no, it didn't happen.
All right, what's your next pick, Joe?
My next pick, of course, is going to be the actual thing that I wanted for second, but honestly, I wanted to get that one first. It's in Bolus's Clutches. A nice 4 and 2 blue enchant permanent again. You control enchanted permanent.
Oh, look, Joe stealing stuff.
Enchanted permanent is legendary. Of course, me stealing stuff, it's like breathing.
It's a little bit of a red flag.
In Magic.
You didn't say in Magic.
I know, I had to reconfigure it because you said it that way. It's like, oh, am I the baddie?
Joe
Yes.
the Klepto is going to be the new tagline. Throwing it in.
You just have nice stuff that I also want to play with.
No.
It's our game of Magic.
No.
Real talk though, Klepto Joe does have a pretty good streamer name to it.
Jesus.
Klepto Joe it is. We're hashtagging it.
Make it happen.
Klepto Joe the unkillable Jank Lord. The card that I showed both of you from Geek Beardly. Shout out to Geek Beardly.
Hi, Geek
Just
Beardly.
your average Joe.
Fair enough.
That's
I'm
a
next,
solid.
and following suit on your Song of the Dryads, we're gonna go with Imprison in the Moon.
Back into the moon.
Yeah, you can't be a thing if you're in the moon.
Yeah, that one I believe only hits planeswalkers, creatures, and lands, right?
I believe it's non-land permanent actually, but we're gonna
It's not
verify.
quite that versatile. It does have some range. It is enchant creature, land, or planeswalker.
Okay, yeah, you are right.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, those are 3 very important
All
things
of the
to keep in
same
check.
targets you mentioned are still the same targets.
It is a colorless land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no green for you. 3 visits, get up out of here.
So that is help. It is kind of weird when you spot remove somebody and then you kind of ramp them at the same time. It does put them in a kind of a weird situation.
It's weird because it doesn't become a land type, and I think that's the main reason why they had to add in the and loses all other abilities. Because Song of the Dryad, it just says becomes a forest, and that's non-negotiable. It's going to lose those abilities because it's a forest.
I'll put it this way at least. Thankfully, your giant Eldrazi spaghetti monster that says attack mill 20 cards is now a colorless land and is not going to spaghettify my face. That's why I don't mind you ramping a single land.
Well, if you're listening out there and you have a situation in which you use an Imprison the Moon or a Song of the Dryad or anything like that, and it bit you in the ass, please send us an email and let me know because I am very curious. If anyone's like giving somebody the 7th mana for a Cyclonic Grip
Yeah.
or something.
That's all it is, man, I wish I had one more mana. Bet?
Because I'm sure there's some stories out there of like someone just absolutely getting hosed because of that. And I am very curious.
That'd be hilarious. Anyways,
All right. Well, back to me. I am going to go next with, because I'm at the end of my line here. I just kind of get to put 2 types of cards here on my list of things I want to do. So most of the good removal that I would draft if I had just had like the perfect board is already kind of been taken, where I'm not too worried about that. A piece of ramp that I really like, I'm going to go with Wild Growth. So Wild Growth, very simple. 1 green mana. When you tap a land, you add additional green with that. So it's basically like a land or elves, but it's not going to get blown up with the Wrath of God effect.
Also combos with Preston Garvey to just do an aggravated assault. Let me just keep on tapping those at the beginning of combat and then tapping it for aggravated assault and just keep doing that.
I mean, it's definitely a fantastic card. I really think that, having enchantment-based ramp in your deck, especially if you're in green, is a really good way to be able to ramp outside of just the traditional land tutors. Like, I would rather have a Wild Growth than like a Cultivator or Kodama's Reach. I think having that extra utility on the 1 land, and also if you have untapping effects, being on the untap a land that taps for 2, does more for you than just tapping 1 land. And then for me, last pick here, I'm going to go with I'm kind of torn between 2 different ones. I'm definitely going to mention one as the auto mention, but I'm going to go with Team Second Life here, and that's Kaya's Ghost form.
Definitely fair.
So Kaya's ghost form is 1 black mana, so very, very easy to get out. I've played in a lot of different decks because just the simplicity. And all it says is you can enchant a creature or planeswalker, so you can put this on a planeswalker as well. When the enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, so it covers both situations, because sometimes you might get a path or something with like the indestructible. Return that card to the battlefield under your control. So it's a way of, if you have a commander that's very problematic, like say Kirik, that you know is going to get removed, being able to put this on it to just kind of give it a second shell of life is really, really helpful.
If only it was Flash, and then it would make the scam deck even more oppressive. Because if they even tried to exile the creature because they saw it coming, oh hey, it's back.
Just give R&D 5 years, they'll make that, I guarantee it. All right, Jacoby, last pick here.
So I am going to go with my actual favorite line of cards. This is a series of cards I wish we had more of. There's not quite enough of them. I'm going to talk about the Impudi, the Impetuses.
Okay.
I love Impetuses. I think the concept of enchanting a creature, goading it, making it slightly better, but giving yourself some either interesting or minute differences. Something like specifically Shiny Impetus, I guess will be the one I specify, where it has to attack, it can't attack me. When it attacks, I get a treasure. You know, incentivizing things to happen and minimizing the reduction to me without making it like a absolute nightmare, because if it's still you and me, it still hits me.
I do like that space of I'm going to remove the threat, but not necessarily for me, where the person still gets to keep the thing. So the pilot of that deck is still happy, but you're also happy because you no longer have that big creature coming at you.
Also, because I was curious, the actual plural form is impetuses, but there is also somebody else who says the noun impetus is generally, it doesn't have a plural form. So it's kind of in a weird limbo.
So if we were being technical,
Gotta
it's
love magic language.
impetus, plural is impetus because it follows the same laws that octopus. But octopus becomes octopi for some reason, but it's also still octopus. If you talk about two, it's weird. I don't know. Impedi are cool.
I guess they didn't want to drop the S and just make it octopoo.
Joe, quick question.
Yeah.
Is it my weird Midwestern brain, but like anytime I think of an animal that is plural and singular the same, for me, it's always moose.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Or
no,
is-
it's
like,
meese.
is this just some Florida nonsense? Or like what's happening here?
No. Plural of moose is meese.
No,
I will die
that
on this
is
hill.
that is in fact a Florida thing.
Okay, so
No. It's meese. No,
Florida-
I will fight everyone until I am dead on this hoot. I refuse. Your moose being plural is wrong. Cry about it. Fuck off.
a moment in silence for the education system of Florida.
It's really funny because of the three of us, when we're in regular games, I like to use a more colorful vocabulary where I use a lot of big words. This is the hill I'm still going to die on. Fuck all of you. Actually, cut out those two fucks. That was not part of this. This is just me being a goof to you, future Joe.
You're still saying
Because it's being cut out, you bitch.
And I'm the last pick.
drum roll.
And of course, I'm choosing Paradox Haze.
Hey,
Yeah, baby.
what's Paradox Haze do?
You enchant player. This could be any player. At the beginning of the enchanted player's first upkeep, each turn, that player gets an additional upkeep step after this step. I've wanted this to have more effects for forever. And I'm so glad that the Doctor Who set finally gave us a commander for it. And oh boy, I love Paradox Haze. I loved it so much. I put it into the budget Joyra. I made sure to have money into that budget just for Joyra so that I could just keep removing time counters from the things that she suspended.
It's funny that you wanted to remove things. Braga also wanted to remove things.
No, that was when I faced it with the Halden Paco deck. That was disgusting.
You know, I suddenly have an inspiration for a deck.
Oh, yeah?
I want to make a 5-color Curses and Impetuses deck. Just all of the really obnoxious, stop attacking me, stop punching yourself, and then just 5 colors so I can have things like Mazzy in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, also with that, you can, because I'm seriously considering putting together Zur again, but building a more like Pillow Fort. And there's a lot of impetuses in Esper that they're all 3 mana. So you can just go get them and plop them right on people.
At least for the like honorable mentions, I had two.
Okay.
Two very specific ones because these were like very much in my wheelhouse.
I
It is.
I have 2 too. I'm wondering if we match
I only have
anything.
one.
I had Journey to Eternity, the one that flips into a land. So you enchant a creature you control, and when it dies, it flips into the land and you return that creature to the battlefield. So it's in that same strain of the Kaya's Ghost form, but the land then says, hey, if you pay 5 mana and tap this, you get to return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Yeah, it's real good.
It's so good. Love it so much.
I think a lot of those flip cards just don't get played because people don't want to constantly take the card out and put it back in.
I mean, maybe.
I think if it was like on a single side, like the Kamigawa cards were back in the day, I would think it would see more play, in my opinion.
I have no issue with it. That's why I'm like, maybe.
I mean, there are certain cards I don't play in certain decks because the sleeves bleed through and I can see the back of them.
Yeah, but
Play
you
with
have
better sleeves.
Also, this applies to only you. You have better than perfect vision. Kick rocks. You literally see things on like almost a microscopic scale at this point. Like, I've held 2 cards that are basically the same sleeve, and you could see that one of them had like a slip of paper literally, I think, a millimeter in diameter big. No one else could physically see it but you, and it bothered you because you saw it prominently. Like, fuck you.
I only have one good ear. I got my Spider-Man powers of vision.
No,
Spider.
Hawkeye powers, excuse you.
Yeah.
That is specifically Hawkeye.
This man's over here with his perfect vision. My brand.
Yeah.
I'll take
But
it.
but the second runner-up was Followed Footsteps. Not many people would know about this card because it was 3 and 2 blue to enchant.
It was on my list.
What?
It was on my list.
Oh shit! It's the motherfucking remix. But yeah, no. 3 and 2 blue, enchant a creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a token that's a copy of enchanted creature onto the battlefield. Because it just says enchant creature, you could just put that on somebody else's creature. They could try to burn the removal on it, or like burn it on the creature itself.
Send that creature into a buzzsaw.
Or they could just let you have it. Over and over and over.
Frank's Red Hot. I put that shit on everything.
I had way more honorable mentions, but we only had...
We'll keep it for time. That's good.
Yeah.
What was yours?
So I already mentioned the curses. That's why I only have one.
Sure.
It's Gift of Immortality.
It's a good one.
Same idea as Kaya's Ghost form, except for if you exile the creature, oh well, but the gift comes back eventually.
Yeah, we've seen Gift of Immortality do gross things, haven't we, Joe?
Yeah. Yeah, we had. We shout out to Benji the Brewer with the AO deck that, oh boy, just kept accruing value.
Just kept going. It was like one of those like scary humans where you trip them and they end up walking or running faster. Like we kept trying to blow stuff up and it just didn't matter.
I hate
I
those
was like,
decks.
outside of literally setting your deck on fire, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. So
Pulls out a pair of scissors and just slaps them on the table.
So here's why it was so disgusting. It was AO, given the gift of immortality, had a Preston and a sack outlet.
So it'd come back, kill itself, come back, kill itself.
Oh no, it was getting 2 activations of AO at once with still having an AO return back.
And just basically his whole deck was on the field. And like this was a 5-pot, so like 4 people against 1, and it did not matter.
Yeah, because I think the other 2
Lord.
were playing a different game, and my game plan was not strong enough to go against that.
And I was trying to I was running the 12 dodgers. I was trying to like steal stuff to get removal to remove stuff, and I just was not hitting anything from anybody to help. It was bad.
That game was rough.
It was real bad. But I feel less bad about the war crimes that the Sakashima deck did before the game.
Yeah.
My 2 honorable mentions here. First one is a card that was actually a typo when it originally was designed, is Rancor, which is, I talked about it on the show. It is 1 green mana, +2/+0, and trample to a creature. Whenever it goes to the graveyard, it comes back to your hand. So you can give it to an opponent to kind of goad it to do and attack somebody else. You can still get it back. You can put it on your own creatures, and then if your Voltron creature dies, at least you have a Rancor to get things started up again. So I really like that card. I've played with it in sealed and stuff before. It's a lot of fun. And then finally, a card that's near and dear to my heart, more from the nostalgia for some of the pod decks and stuff I had back in the day, and that's Pattern of Rebirth. Pattern of Rebirth is an enchantment. It is 3 and a green. Simply says when the creature dies, you can search your library for a creature and put it into play. There's a lot of combos that you can continuously loot this and pretty much get whatever creatures you want out of the deck to go for a combo. But in simpler pods, it's just a really good creature tutor.
Doesn't it also return it to your hand once that happens? Because I'm pretty sure Pattern of Rebirth was that kind of combo piece where the creature died, you did the tutor, and it was the aura was returned to your hand.
Well, problem is, you would go get bad bitch Boon Weaver Giant. With Boon Weaver Giant, whenever it comes into play, either from your deck or your graveyard, you find an aura and put it on him. So what you do is you would find ways to play like Revel Arcs and stuff that can recur the Boon Weaver, and you loop that in. So you're constantly getting it back out, sacking Boon Weaver, going getting something else. And then you set up like a 3 or 4 card combo to kind of implement everything at once. It's gross. It's fun. I haven't played that deck in years, but it's still a card I look at it, I think fondly of.
You know, this entire episode, there's a pair of decks that come to mind that I always really loved. One of them I never got to see do anything really fun, which was my Curses deck. Because Curses, when they made the commander for it, it was conceptually amazing. I loved where it could go. It still does not have the support to really do enough.
That's the thing that I find really annoying sometimes about Wizards is they have the philosophy is we're going to give a commander to everything, but sometimes there's a theme or commander deck that just does not have enough support to really hold its own. And then it's not going to get more support either.
Like they come up with the Curses, perfect. It was a perfect concept. The commander was amazing. Could not have designed that commander any better. Please give me more than like 20 options for okay Curses.
The best I could tell you is open it up to Wooburg by doing 1 creature prismatic, with that being the secret commander, and then just hope for the best.
Well, see, with that as well, I think that is an interesting topic because I like the trade-off in card design of if you want to play this commander, you're going to sacrifice something. If it's the Merfolk tribe, it's a perfect example right now. It's like if you want to do some of the blue-white Merfolk, you got to use this commander. You got to use Sig. If you want to use the blue-green, you have some options here. If you want to do Bant, you can do that, but you're going to have a commander that doesn't necessarily synergize with Merfolk outright. So by adding more colors, you're sacrificing command zone utility.
Which is also really funny that Gavin Verhey made a test card that is a Bant Merfolk that cares about Merfolk tribal.
Yeah. And on the test environment, I don't necessarily like play design where for Edgar Markov, like we had Rakdos vampires, we had Orzhov vampires, and then we had Edgar Markov, that was Mardu, and he was universally the correct answer for vampires. Like if you're running vampires, that is your commander.
But it didn't include the blue vampires, and that's why Evelyn exists.
I was gonna say, why
well, that came out after the fact.
Yeah. The other thing is that it didn't include the blue vampires. And now we also have Esper for some vampire shenanigans. So like we've expanded the color pie a little bit. No, it's not just Mardu.
Well, since then, but like I think that like when you have like the universal solution of a particular tribe or type, like the Dragon, for example, where you can technically run like Miram Sentinel Worm if like you're trying to go faster or something, but like when you have something that's just universally like the best of its kind, for me, I just think it's a little bit sloppy.
That's why like Morophon exists to help that. And it's not quote unquote universally good, but yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, but this will be definitely a topic for another episode. In the meantime, do we have any closing thoughts?
I got one more on the Wooburg creature thing.
Cool.
Stop making the tribal commanders in Wooburg just, I'm funny Cascade. Like, stop making Sliver's Cascade, then Joda Legends Cascade. Stop making Cascade your solution for tribe, please.
Well, not all of them did. Like
but they keep doing it.
But like I'm thinking of the elf researcher that they made for the Slivers precon for Commander Masters, where it was just, hey, the type you chose also is Sliver, and they kind of did a commingle.
Absolute nonsense.
No, I love that one. I still need to build it.
You go for it. In the meantime, if you have a topic you'd like to see on the show or our corresponding blog, please send us an email at thoughtvesselshow@gmail.com. And we'll be sure to be able to see if we can find a place to put it. Anyone else have anything to say?
No.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you for listening to the Thought Vessel Show, and you have a great week. Take care.
Bye.